When discussing recent club rebuilds, the transformations of Arsenal under Mikel Arteta or Barcelona under Xavi spring first to mind. Such rebuilds involve more than just tactical changes and encompass an array of meticulous decisions made behind the scenes, like the strategic recruitment of players and technical staff to the unwavering faith placed in a manager's vision. But surprisingly, Tottenham's ongoing transformation since Jose Mourinho's departure in the summer of 2021 is a rebuild that's rarely talked about. Spearheaded by former managing director of football, Fabio Paratici, and club chairman Daniel Levy, this rebuild has helped lay the foundation for the current Spurs side under Ange Postecoglou. This is the untold story of Tottenham's silent rebuild since 2021 and how they built a team ready-made for success. At the end of the 2020-21 season, Tottenham found themselves in yet another identity crisis. Their failure to secure a Champions League qualification spot, coupled with the sacking of Mourinho just days before their Carabao Cup final defeat, left the club yearning for a fresh start. For over 2 decades, Daniel Levy has been the driving force behind Tottenham's remarkable boardroom stability. He is also perhaps the most micromanaging executive in English football and has involved himself in virtually every aspect of the club, from recruitment and construction to finance and operations. But for all the criticism directed at him due to the club's lack of trophies, he has always run a tight ship. Amidst Levy's desperate search for a Mourinho replacement, Steve Hitchen, the club's technical performance director, had prepared a list of prospects. But the club's attempts to secure Hansi Flick, who had just resigned from Bayern Munich, fell through, and Erik ten Hag didn't entirely convince Levy. They even tried luring Mauricio Pochettino back from PSG, but the French club adamantly refused to part with their new head coach. So Levy had to look elsewhere, and in late May, he was presented with a new idea. The Italian double of Antonio Conte and Fabio Paratici. Both of them had just announced their departures from Juventus and Inter Milan, so why not unite them at Tottenham? It immediately appealed to Levy's sense of wanting the best of the best at his club to go with the training ground and stadium built under his watch. In the end, only Paratici said yes, turning down interest from PSG, where there was no obvious role as they still had Leonardo in place as sporting director. It was a huge move in June 2021 therefore, when Levy relinquished so much of his authority to create the role of managing director of football for Paratici, a seasoned veteran known for overseeing Juventus' decade of Serie A dominance as their chief football officer. Paratici's arrival marked the start of a new era at Tottenham, and Levy had hoped his newly appointed MD would bring with him the same standards and level of accountability to the London club. The Paratici era kicked off with him searching for a new head coach. His initial favourite was Paulo Fonseca, who had just left Roma, but after discussing final details with him in person, the Italian decided against the appointment as he wasn't convinced by Fonseca's choices of backroom staff and wanted someone more focused on fixing Spurs' leaky defence. The following day, Paratici received a phone call from his close personal friend, the renowned agent Jorge Mendes, who informed him that Gennaro Gattuso was cancelling his contract with Fiorentina. Paratici admired Gattuso's personality and felt he could bring the club back together. Progress was being made, but when fans began boycotting Gattuso's appointment due to his previous comments on topics such as women in football and for headbutting Spurs assistant Joe Jordan during a Champions League match in 2011, Levy had to pull the plug. With the new season approaching, Spurs needed a new manager, fast. While there was some internal support for Brighton's Graham Potter, Paratici finally opted for another Mendes client, Nuno Espirito Santo. Paratici's other job that summer was to strengthen the squad with transfers. Up to that point, Spurs had been suffering from poor recruitment and had failed to offload deadweight players. The squad was looking old and stale, and Paratici had to reduce the average age by signing young players, albeit with a very modest budget. But this was Paratici's specialty, not so much talent spotting, but imaginative deal making, like his trademark swap deals during his time at Juventus and knowing the right people to make those deals happen. First in was Pierluigi Collini on loan from Atalanta, then Bryan Gil for 21 million plus Eric Lamela, and then Christian Romero on an initial loan with a £42.5 million buy obligation, also from Atalanta. Choosing to simply pay the asking price for Romero, knowing that even Lionel Messi was pressuring Barcelona to do the same, remains one of the smartest things Paratici ever did. That first window was generally viewed positively, with Paratici adding Pape Matar from Metz and Emerson Royal from Barcelona, all young players, none too expensive, while fitting in with the overall strategy of the club. Tottenham began to look like a much changed side. During the Mourinho days, Levy was a big presence at the training ground, holding regular meetings with whoever was manager. But he wanted to step back, so the training ground soon became Paratici's domain. The Italian would be there every day, talking to Nuno, talking to the players, and exuding the authority of someone clearly in charge. He quickly developed into something of a cult figure among supporters, some of whom even chanted his name when he stepped off the team bus ahead of Spurs facing Crystal Palace in September 2021. It was their first game after the summer window, and after 3 wins from 3 games, they were already top of the league. They would, however, go on to lose 3-0 that day. Results then went from bad to worse, and after Tottenham's 3-0 loss at home to United in October, the fans were mutinous. Although Paratici's first response was to stick with Nuno, Levy broke the news that a new head coach had already been lined up. Antonio Conte was coming to London. When Conte arrived, standards were driven up and the whole club suddenly took on a different feel. If anyone knew how to manage Conte, to negotiate through his raw emotions and keep him happy enough to focus on his job, it was Paratici. Years ago, he had the reputation of being the only man who could control Conte when they worked together at Juventus, and it was soon to become one of his most important roles at Spurs. Paratici's immediate job was to find Conte the players he needed. Levy never promised Conte a huge transfer budget, but there was still a disparity between the club's transfer policy and what Conte demanded. The club wanted to pursue younger, cheaper options, but the manager wanted experienced players who could come straight into the team. So it was Paratici's job to bridge that gap. This was put to the test in the January 2022 transfer window. Paratici considered a move to sign Adama Traore from Wolves to play wing-back in Conte's 3-at-the-back formation. But Levy was never convinced, and the player went to Barcelona instead. Levy was more interested in a move for Luis Diaz, but the Colombian ended up at Liverpool. At this point, Paratici, who was known for juggling multiple options before making a decision, became a focal point of criticism from supporters due to his perceived lack of action when Conte desperately needed reinforcements. But at the end of the window, Paratici produced a masterstroke, turning back to old club Juventus and signing 2 players who had fallen out of Max Allegri's team. Rodrigo Bentancur for £16.7 million and Dejan Kulusevski on an 18-month loan with a relatively cheap buy option. The impact of these 2 players on Spurs' season was immediate. Their first game starting together was the thrilling 3-2 victory against City, which kick-started Spurs' pursuit of a 4th place finish in the league, and before long, Conte had molded the best Spurs side since the peak years of Pochettino. Paratici's reputation was never higher, and when PSG were reportedly considering reviving their long-standing interest in him, he made it clear that he was committed to Tottenham. After it was confirmed Conte would stay, Paratici's next job was to plan for the next season. As the summer window opened up, his challenge was to repeat the success of the preceding January window. But this time it was a bust, completing deals in a manner in which they would never really have done before, following an unprecedented cash injection of up to £150 million. They spent an initial 50 on Richarlison from Everton and agreed a free transfer for Ivan Perisic from Inter, but neither of these players had much impact in their first season. Beyond that, Paratici signed players who weren't good enough to be regular starters, particularly failing to land a world-class left-footed centre-back to pair with Romero, and had to make do with Clement Longley on loan. Yves Bissouma was a star for Brighton, but deemed by Conte as a squad player for Spurs, while Jed Spence was already publicly denounced as a club signing by Conte before he even joined. And by the start of the season, Conte was already warning that anyone who thought the club signings made them genuine title contenders was misguided. Ultimately, the headlines of that season were the falling out of Conte, his methods, and his deteriorating relationship with the dressing room. But when Spurs finally parted ways with Conte mid-season, Paratici's name was nowhere to be seen on the club's official statement. It raised questions about his future, but alas, It was his work at Juventus that brought an end to his time at Spurs. He had been under intense scrutiny since the Italian FA banned him for 30 months in January 2023 over the Plusvalenza scandal relating to inflated transfer fees at Juventus. Despite Paratici strongly protesting his innocence and appealing to have his ban reversed, he faced the decision to step down from his role at Spurs. The club stood by him throughout the process, even after FIFA extended his ban globally. However, following the confirmation of the ban, he had no choice but to resign in April of this year. There have been many changes at the club personnel-wise within the last 12 months, but there should still be some continuity in the club rebuild with an increasing emphasis on data, especially now that Johan Lang has joined as technical director from Aston Villa and with Paratici still operating in a consultancy capacity. The appointment of Ange Postecoglou as new head coach in the summer also proved to be the antidote to the toxicity that surrounded the end of Conte's reign. Summer signings James Maddison, Pedro Porro, Mickey van der Ven, Guillermo Vicario, and Destiny Udogie returning from loan have all been mainstays in Postecoglou's side, and the signings Paratici made continue to leave a longer imprint. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more exciting football news, stories, and insights. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a beat.